Hello guys, and today I'm joined with Ian from the Forever Blue podcast on YouTube. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you, despite my team, as we're recording this, having just got out of the Champions League. But it's football, isn't it?
Yeah.
These things happen.
Yeah, so right, kicking off, what were your thoughts on yesterday's game then?
Disappointing, of course. City still haven't won the Champions League. A lot of City fans that I'd spoken to were expecting it to be a bit of a stroll, really, to go past Lyon. And we're already worried more about the Bayern Munich game, which I thought was perhaps thinking too much of a step ahead. And maybe the players, maybe the manager was thinking that way. The manager, I thought, was overcautious. The word that City fans use all the time is that he tinkers too much when it comes to the Champions League. And I think that's probably right, that he made some unnecessary changes and very uncharacteristically went for quite a cautious approach. He played an extra midfielder, three at the back, which he doesn't normally do. So I think a lot of the blame from Manchester City fans is actually on the shoulders of Pep, despite the huge success that he's had and the trophies and the fantastic football. It just shows that even the best coaches in the world don't always get it right.
Yeah, I think watching the game, I was thinking he did make a couple mistakes in the team and the lineup. And I think, as you said, the team and Pep's mentality was already looking at the semi-final game against Bayern Munich when they still had 90 minutes against Lyon. So as I said earlier, you do run your own Manchester City fan channel. So for people who haven't seen your channel before or don't know who you are, just explain to me a little about what you do on your channel.
Well, I have come to YouTube and social media quite late, really, in my career. Obviously, you're at the beginning, and I wish you all the best in what you're trying to do now. And you have the great advantage of being youthful and embracing all this new technology, which makes me sound like a real old git. But basically, I was a BBC commentator. I spent nearly 25 years commentating on City's games for the BBC, which was absolutely the best job in the world. I'm a fan. I'm a lifelong fan. I've been going home and away watching City since I was, certainly in my teens. And here I am now at the other end of my career, looking for a new career, as it were, on YouTube, because I left the BBC. I'm not going to go into why that happened, but it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. So to try to continue on with my career, I decided that I would try YouTube at the suggestion of somebody else, and was quite surprised how it took off. And now I do, or have been doing for the last 3 years, a match day vlog, which is perhaps a little different than one or two other channels do, in that the video that I produce is made up of fans' views and ex-players and celebrities and whoever I bump into, both before and after a game. Whereas a lot of fan channels do separate videos for before and after, and probably focus more on after. And if you look at the success that Arsenal Fan TV have had, who were the sort of big forerunners, really, if you like, of all that sort of thing, it's focused on people's views after the game, and it's also a model that is aimed, really, I believe, on fans of other clubs rather than Arsenal fans tuning in, dare I say, to have a bit of a laugh at Arsenal fans. Now, as a lifelong City fan, I didn't want to create a channel that inevitably people will laugh at fans that are in meltdown or having a bit of a go at their team if they've lost a game. But I didn't want to create a channel that was designed to be a laughing stock or to take the mickey. I'm a City fan myself, so I've always wanted to be very respectful. But I wanted to give a platform, having hosted radio phone-ins for many years, for fans. And not as many people now go on radio phone-ins. It's all about video on YouTube and podcasts and things like that. So I've tried to create a channel which is respectful to the club, but still critical if it needs to be, and with no agenda. So it's not about numbers. It's not about making lots of money out of it. It's about being honest, fair, respectful, but also critical if there need to be. I also do a weekly podcast, which is obviously an audio version. And since we went into lockdown because of this terrible COVID thing, I've had to transfer, just like you're doing this interview with me now, long distance on Zoom. I'm having to do my pre-match and post-match interviews like that as well, sat at home, because for 45 years I've gone home and away, watching every single City game, including games against Bristol City, long time before you were born, when the Wurzels were on the pitch at half time. And Joe Royle played for Bristol City, who went on to be City manager. So I remember getting stuck on a railway station trying to make my way home from Bristol on a Friday night. Ended up being on Birmingham station for about 3 hours while I waited for the early morning trains to start. So I've had all that experience, and my vlogs have always been about the match going experience. And not being at the match is very frustrating for me, and means that the unique type of videos that I've been doing, because I don't think anybody else quite does City games, certainly like I've been doing, have now changed. And if I'm being honest, I'm a little bit of a crossroads, whether I can continue on. But anyway, for now, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, so like you said, you've been doing the interviews with fans and stuff. Some of my favourite videos of yours have been the ones when City have won away, and all the fans have just been so excited and bubbly after the game. They're some of my favourite ones. But as you said, it must have been really hard having to completely change the way you do your channel over the last couple of months, just because of obviously COVID-19. So was there any doubt in your mind that you were going to carry on doing it at home, with interviews at home, or did you think you might take a break, or did you know you were definitely going to carry on doing the interviews at home?
Well, the model that I've used, because as an ex-BBC employee who's made me living out of journalism and following City for many, many years, this is still, it's not just been a hobby for me. And I know there are lots of people who do similar things to what I do as a hobby. I've tried to continue on professionally, and it's hard. That's a hard model. I was supported by the club, Manchester City, for more than 2 years. They were paying me a fee, basically, for my content to put on their website. And that allowed me to continue on to be professional, and also meant that with some sponsorship from companies that have a Manchester City sympathy, usually, I've been able to continue to make a living out of it. I'd made commitments and promises to fulfill whatever happened the season. So that's what I did. Those sponsorship deals now have come to an end. So as it stands at the moment, I have no sponsors for next season. And City, under the current circumstances, have decided that they can no longer afford to pay me a fee for my content. So that leaves me in no man's land. But there was no doubt that I was always going to continue on with the season. But I can't deny that as an obsessed football fan, who to me the be-all and end-all is to be at every City game, that's what drove me into going to the BBC in the first place. That's what drove me not to continue on my ambitions to work on maybe network radio or network television and stay in local radio just to cover the team that I support. Having done that for so long, not being at the games now, I did apply for press passes and couldn't get them. It's really made it very difficult for me, both in terms of the type of content that I'm producing, but also, frankly, for me mentally. So I've had a lot of doubts about it, but I promised to continue on. I felt I owed it to the people who'd committed to me, so that's why I did it. But whether I'll continue on next season is something I'm now going to have a think about.
Yeah. So going on to a more happier note, if you like, you said you started off working in radios. How was it working for the BBC for over 25 years, covering Manchester?
Wonderful. I mean, when I was a youngster, I listened to the radio a lot, and there were 2 channels in Manchester, Piccadilly Radio and the BBC Radio Manchester, the GMR, it's had different names. And if somebody had said to me, what is your dream job? I would have said, first of all, working for the BBC, because that's how high esteem I held the BBC, but also to commentate on City games. So to actually get to the point where I fulfilled that dream, and for so many years did exactly what I'd always dreamed of, was amazing. And I'm very proud of the 23 years actually it was that I worked for the BBC. The first day I worked there, I remember coming home at night and my wife saying to me, you know, how did work go? And I thought, work, this doesn't feel like work. You know, I'm basically doing what I enjoy doing for an establishment that I hold in the highest possible regard, and somebody's paying me as well. You know, I couldn't believe it, and that's how it felt for a lot of the time. And I've done a lot of lectures and things for students and for university, colleges, and all sorts of people. And I remember talking to some students and saying to them when I was telling them different processes that go on in journalism, and I noticed the kid looking at the clock, and I said, "Why are you looking at the clock?" And he said, "Well, the canteen opens at a certain time, and I want to get one of the seats in the canteen." And I said, "Oh, well, you know what? If you get a job like I'm doing at the BBC, you know, the clock doesn't matter anymore. It's not like when I worked in a bank for a while, and when I worked in the bank, I hated it. So I looked at the clock all the time so I could relate to what this kid was doing.
Yeah.
You know, when I got in the morning, when's break time? When's lunch time? When do I go home? And I'd be counting down mentally. When I worked in the BBC, I never looked, well, I looked at the clock for deadlines, but I never looked at the clock for when the job was finished. And if it meant that I was still there, if I was, let's say my shift was due to end at 6 o'clock in the evening, I might still be sat there at 8:30 in the evening working on something because I wanted to get it right. I wanted it to be the best it could be, so that the people who listened to my programs would get the best product I could provide. And that's how I always worked, and I never looked at the clock. And you know, I never did a 40-hour week. I always did a lot more hours than that. And then even when I came home, you know, I'd be straight into it because it was a passion, it was a love, it was what I enjoyed doing. So I would argue, certainly in terms of my professional life, that those 23 years at the BBC will never be beaten. They were the best 23 years of my life. I'd recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, it's my dream to cover the Bristol City games home and away as well. So, as you said, you've covered Man City over your YouTube channel, radio, and you've followed them home and away since you were a teenager. So, what's been your favourite memory following City home and away?
Oh, there's so many, and it's worth mentioning as well. I wrote a book with Vincent Kompany last year, so I was sitting down with the City captain and writing a book about City winning 3 domestic trophies, writing Colin Bell, City's greatest ever player, certainly till the modern era. I wrote his autobiography. I wrote a book with Rodney Marsh. I've even written my own diary of a season. So to do things like that, to commentate, to report and meet so many famous people, a bit like you, not on YouTube, but I've sat and interviewed so many of my heroes, both in sport, from Manchester City and from the general world of entertainment. Blimey, the list as long as your arm. So all those could be things that stick out for me. In terms of watching City, the first game you ever go to, I'm sure you can remember the first match you went to, and it will always stick with you. Even when you're a lot older, you'll remember that feeling of walking into Ashton Gate that first time, and you know what the score was, and maybe the smells, and you know, the feeling you had. And I can remember the feeling when I went to my first game, which was in the old days, the 15th of April, 1970. Believe it or not, I'd only ever watched City on black and white television up to that point. So to walk in an April day and see the pitch being green and the shirts being sky blue was quite overwhelming. It's a bit different for you because you've probably watched in 4K, maybe you've watched in 3D, who knows what, before you go to a game, and you get a much better picture of what it's really like. But it really overwhelmed me. But since then, I've seen City win 6-1 against our great rivals, United, at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
And I was commentating on that game. Fantastic day.
I've
seen Yaya Toure burst up the pitch and score some of those great goals of his, and Vincent Kompany do things like that. But I think you'd have to say that the greatest moment was I was on the microphone when City won the league in 2012, and Sergio Aguero scored the goal in the last minute. And as the ball hit the back of the net, You can imagine the emotions
Yeah.
that were in me, because I wasn't just a reporter, I was a fan, and I was concerned that I might, get carried away. I might spoil the moment. I might become unprofessional, because if City hadn't scored in that moment, United would have won the league. Bolton
Yeah.
Wanderers were battling for survival in the Premier League, which in our area, Greater Manchester, was highly significant. So I was trying to be ultra professional in everything I was doing. Was conscious that a lot of people would be listening for this breaking news. And at that moment, Nigel Glegon, who's an ex-City player, ex-Stoke, one or two other clubs in his time, fantastic career, left-footed, left winger, Sunderland fan, Sunderland born, was sat next to me as my summariser, and he went bonkers. He jumped up, he had headphones on, he had a microphone in his hand, and as he jumped up, and I'm trying to be professional, albeit very, very excited, but as he jumps up into the air, he takes all the equipment with him, everything comes crashing to the floor, all the wires come undone, and we go off air at the greatest moment potentially of my career. You can imagine the emotion that was rushing through. I was on my hands and knees picking the bits up, putting it all back together, when I should have been celebrating, when I should have been enjoying the moment like everybody else in the stadium was. It took 45 seconds to get us back on air. And that 45 seconds was the longest 45 seconds of my life. And I didn't even know we were going to get it connected together again. But I managed to do it. We got back on air, and later I managed to join my commentary and all the build up to the goal with how I reacted at the final whistle. And if anybody ever finds that on the internet anywhere, the two bits are joined together, but actually they were two separate bits. It sounds like it was my commentary at the final whistle, and that'll never be beaten. I mean, I was on 5 Live later that night. Not arguing, but certainly having a heated debate with Terry Christian, the famous Manchester United fan. And after the game, Vincent Kompany gave me his captain's armband from that day, which is one of my most treasured possessions. So that'll never, ever be beaten. No matter what City do, no matter what happens in football, whatever happens in my life, that'll never be beaten. Never be beaten. I hope that happens for you one day.
Yeah, I have been lucky enough to have a moment like that as well when Corey Smith scored against Man United. I wasn't on the BBC, I didn't go off air, but it was still probably the best moment I've had in my life so far.
You'll have many more, I'm sure. And beating United is always sweet.
Yeah. We had Man City in the next round as well, so it was a very, very good season that season. So finally, as you know, it's my dream to go into commentary for Bristol City, and next season I'm going to start doing stuff like you're doing with Man City, but for Bristol, obviously. So if you had any advice for me or anyone else who's trying to get into this profession, what would that advice be?
Well, what you're doing at the moment is great, because you're taking control of what you do, and I've observed what you're doing, and you don't appear to be working from a script, which is good. Because a lot of people make that mistake, and then they don't listen to the answers when somebody is talking to them, and you've listened and you've responded. I don't mean that in a patronising way. I just mean that's a good advice for anybody. When you're doing an interview, all right, have a few ideas, maybe have a couple of bullet points, but always be prepared to go in another direction. But I suppose the best advice I can give anybody is don't try to be like anybody else.
Yeah.
You be yourself. It sounds a very obvious thing, and it sounds very easy, because you're going to compete against loads and loads of people who want to do what you want to do. If you really, really want it, and I know you see X Factor and you hear people saying, "Oh yeah, I really, really want it." Anybody can say that, but you've got to really, really be committed. You've got to make sacrifices. You've got to go the extra mile. I don't believe that I've got any extra talent or more talent than anybody else. Loads of people have got as much talent as I've got, but that extra 2 or 3 hours that I might have spent editing something at the BBC, that extra bit of research, or that genuine passion that comes because I really care about what I do, I believe has been the reason for the career that I've had. You've already demonstrated by doing this that you've got some of that. So keep it going. But don't listen to other people, and listen to yourself, and be very self-critical, and think sometimes, oh, that was really good, and why was it good? And sometimes think, that didn't really work, and why didn't it work? I used to listen to hours and hours and hours of my early broadcasts. It sounds like a vanity thing, but it wasn't. It was to be very self-critical, and I don't do it anymore. That's not to say I'm not self-critical anymore, but in the early days, certainly for the first 10 or 15 years, I would always listen back to what I did. So listen back, but most importantly, if you enjoy what you're doing, which clearly you do, and you're passionate about it, and you're prepared to go that extra mile, and you just be yourself, you'll get there. You will.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today, and I will take that advice, and hopefully I will get where I want to be in a couple of years.
I have no doubt. Just remember me when you're rich and famous, and I'm retired, walking around with my Zimmer frame.
So yeah, thank you for coming on, Ian. I'll put your channel link in the description. Everyone go and subscribe to him. It's completely amazing Manchester City channel. And yeah, no worries. And thank you for coming on. And yeah, I will see everyone on the next one.